Greetings and welcome to another episode of Women and Resistance. And as usual, I have my sister here, uh, Aya Fubara Eneli Esquire, my, myself, Adesoji Iginla. And today, we're talking about a writer, a filmmaker, a revolutionary, a mom, and she wears multiple hats. I speak of no other than Toni Cade Bambara. And sister, uh, who is Miss Bambara?
I am a Pan Africanist. I am a socialist. I'm a feminist. I'm a Black nationalist. I am an internationalist. And I see no basic contradiction with being all of those things and being a woman. That is who I am. I am so much more than that, of course. I was a wife, married at 20, and did not make that mistake again. I am a mother. I'm a daughter. I'm a gatherer of people. I connect people. I'm a root worker. I am a social worker. I'm a writer. I'm an editor. I write films. I help others write and produce films. But more than all of those things, or should I say, all of those things in tandem made me who I am. I was a teacher. I'm a teacher. And I am one who has an undying optimism that we will figure out how to free ourselves. I am one who believes in the revolution and that
Hmm.
we will free ourselves.
So, speaking of revolutions, you are quoted as saying the necessity of countering America's propaganda on integration of the population while negating the country's past is a responsibility incumbent on all writers. What do you mean by that?
Hmm. I could probably best answer that question if I were to quote myself on something that I experienced a number of times. I used to teach on the East Coast. I was actually a tenured professor at Rutgers University in the Rutgers University system at Livingston College. And this was the height of the 60s and 70s, towards the end of the 60s, almost the 70s, where it was the height of the Black arts movement. And there were Black writers and there were Black women writers finally taking our space. And of course, we'll talk about some of the works that I published as a result. But it became very clear to me and my colleagues that fervor, that moment in time where even the white structures were supporting and giving room for Black expression, we realized that that window was closing. And at that point, they started to have more restrictive admissions criteria and, just different policies that negatively impacted Black and Brown people in particular. And I started to toy with the idea of moving to Atlanta, kind of a reverse migration. First, Black people had migrated from the South to the
Or to
North,
the north,
but
yeah.
now there were some of us now migrating to the back to the South. And I thought that going to Atlanta at the time, I had already published um, a book that has been celebrated for a long time now. My book, The Black Woman, an anthology. And I was surprised to find out that these historically Black colleges and universities were, in some ways, even less welcoming of the Black arts movement and the Black power movement than the white universities.
Mm.
Some of us wanted so bad to fit in and be accepted, and the respectability politics was ridiculous. And so when I write that, when I wrote those words, it was based on the fact that too many of us, educated and otherwise, seek not to speak out against the very country and policies that have so traumatized um, Black and Brown people across the globe. And I feel that it is our responsibility to do so. That when you have any kind of power, which we all do have some power, you should definitely use it in revolution. As a matter of fact, one of the quotes for which I am very well known is that my goal is to make revolution
Irresistible.
irresistible, because too many of us see it as too much of a sacrifice and we want to be comfortable. We do not want to feel like we have to give up anything for these fleeting comforts.
Mm.
Yes.
Okay. You also detest using the word or the term minority. Can you elaborate as to why that is?
I mean, I could, but I think that most of your listeners understand that we're not minor to anything, and then that's a mindset that just
Mm.
limits you. Um, my goal in life, you know what, let me read this to you, because that might help your listeners who are first, being introduced to me. So yes, my work is serious and deals with some very serious topics, but what I specifically focused on was also showing the joy in revolt, showing the humanity of us just as we are. We don't have to disguise ourselves or to wear a mask or to be anything else. And one of the ways that my students have told me that I really impacted them was by helping them to see gifts in themselves that they couldn't see. So
Mm.
I lived my life um as a joyous revolt. I did not, it wasn't like I was unaware of the hardships. I could tell you about my parents and what eventually led to my mother divorcing my father. I could tell you about that. I could tell you about the structural racism. I can tell you about the chauvinism and the sexism, even within the Black Power movement. And all of those are important things to talk about. But what I
True.
will also tell you is that it was important to me that we find the thing in us that allows us to live. And so when I was in Cuba, oh my goodness, you would find me in the nightclubs till they closed because I was going to dance. I believe in the power of rituals. I believe in connecting to our ancestors. As a matter of fact, the young lady who came and talked to me and said, I and my brother Adesoji want to present you. I said to her, don't come with any sadness if you are going to talk about who I am. And then I sent her back to study me some more and come back to me. Because do you know that she had the nerve to come and try to talk to me without any rituals? She figured it out. And that's why we're here. Because just the fact that you want to talk about one of us in this program that you're doing of women and resistance does not mean that we have to open up our spirits and our souls. And that's what she was seeking. Anyone can read the books, although many of you don't read, but
Mm.
hopefully today you will be enlightened, you will be encouraged, you will be empowered, not just to read, but to write, to tell your own stories, and to go and gather the stories of your elders. You know, one of the things I love to do with my classes, oh my goodness, I understand that some of you now are learning under, I would consider him a young man, Dr. Greg Carr, who talks about jailbreaking the university.
University.
Well, I'm proud of him and his terminology, but I was doing that before we put a phrase on it. My goal was to, if we were going to talk about nutrition, let's bring in some of the African older women in our community to talk about how African culture has influenced the food we eat here in the United States. I wanted us to sit around the tree, and it'll be people from all walks of life, because
Mm,
we all have lived experiences, and we can share those stories, and we can learn from each other. There was no hierarchy. And as a matter of fact, by the time I got to Atlanta and had to do with all those highfalutin Negroes, I really truly started to focus more of my work in the community. Let me tell you that this work was so important to me. Some of you may remember this if you've been following all the series that they've done so far. We talked about a jail. It was a jail that Billie Holiday was in, and it was also a jail that Claudia Jones
which
was put
was in.
in. Yes, Alderson. And guess what? I actually went and taught writing workshops in that prison. And
Mm,
afterwards, we began what we call the Bambara Writing Award. It was so funny that the first year that award was going to be given out to Aqua Kamal Harris is her name. Aqua was not there to receive the award. You know why? She had been sent to another prison in punishment for leading a revolt. That is my kind of woman. Yes, but guess what? Back then, the way we worked together,
mm.
I could not make it there to give the award. I frantically called my sister Sonia Sanchez, and Sonia flew out there. And she presented the award, of course, to Aqua, who was not also not there. But she met with those women and infused light into them and prayed with them. So much so that they never invited her back there again. But this is the kind of the work. But I digress. What I wanted to share and read with you is this. For people sometimes believed that it was safer to live with complaints, was necessary to cooperate with grief, was all right to become an accomplice in self ambush. Take heart to flat out decide to be well and stride into the future sane and whole. I don't want to focus on the trauma. I don't want to focus on what has been done to us. We know what has been done to us. We know what continues to be done. I wrote extensively about police brutality and all the different ways that we're traumatized, including the killing of children, the Atlanta children's murders. But what I always want my people to hold on to, what I always want all peoples of the world to hold on to, because at one point I was advocating for a united women's movement, not just Black women, Chicano women, Asian women, all women. We understand what we're experiencing. To come together and to fight this patriarchy and to fight white supremacy together. We keep missing these moments when we can come together. But my point is, we can't sit around and just have pity parties. Don't invite me to those. In fact, people would often remark about my boldness that would jar them sometimes when they would first meet me. Because I will meet someone and I'll say, "What are you doing with the rest of your life?" And it's not a question that, strangers often ask,
Mm.
but it would make people stop to think. And so I ask your audience, What are you going to do with the rest of your life? I don't care if it's a day, if it's 15 days, if it's 15 years, if it's 50 years. I died at 56. I didn't know I would die that young. But let me tell you, I never let anything stop me, which is why people keep writing books about me, and they're not going to stop anytime soon. You know why? I have more fun and history in my pinky than some of you have in your entire bodies because you're not doing anything. What are
Mm.
you going to do with your life? Here's the other thing. I'm going to speak directly to my sisters on this one. I have always, I think, opposed the stereotypic definitions of masculine and feminine, not only because I thought it was a lot of merchandising nonsense, but rather because I always found the either or implicit in those definitions antithetical to what I was all about. And it's certainly antithetical to what revolution for self is all about, the whole person. How do you start chopping yourself? Let's talk about masculine versus feminine wear and go back through time. Did we not all tie rapas of some sort? And now pants are masculine and dresses are feminine. What nonsense! Study. And that's the other thing I encourage people to do. Study, sit in your communities. Oh, let me tell you, with my first book, Gorilla My Love, my first collection of stories, my editor, Miss Chisholm, she, I type it, I send it to them, they make their changes, they type, they send it back to me. I make some more changes. She sends it in for the galleys, right? These people correct all of my English because they had no concept of quote unquote the vernacular, if you got to give it a term, but the ways that other people express themselves.
Mm.
And I kept her as my editor because she went back to them and said, oh no, this was not an issue of someone not knowing the right syntax and the right verbiage and whatever. No, this is about expressing my culture. And I want to see more of us do that. Tell our stories as we live it, not set up for any other person's eyes or the
Mm.
white gaze, like my good friend Toni Morrison would say, because Toni also edited and published many of my books.
Hmm.
But did I go too far? Because I didn't even tell you about my beginnings. But go ahead, ask your question, young man.
So you, I mean, you've said in countless of your books that writing is is a legitimate way, an important way to participate in the empowerment of the community that named me. I repeat,
Yes.
writing is a legitimate way, an important way to participate in the empowerment of the community that named me. Now, in light of the political atmosphere in the United States at the moment, how would you think writing plays a role in the liberation of the people?
I would ask your audience to answer that.
Mm.
I could give them the answers, but you know what? Critical thinking is something we need to start engaging in a more intentional way.
Mm.
It seems like some who are willing to, no, actually, it just seems like we've become a nation of spectators, whether the spectacle is a historian or someone who seems to know a lot, or whether the spectacle is football or basketball or some video, or I hear you people have a TikTok on some other things. In my day, we would have used this technology to bring about change because I believe that all people should be cultural workers, writers, filmmakers, educators, and that
Mm.
we have a responsibility to use our gifts, writing being one of them,
Yeah.
to awaken the imagination and desire for freedom in people. because we have been so beaten down, and where the propaganda is so much that it tells people how powerless they are, that they believe in it, and that they sit around waiting for a savior.
Hmm.
Art should not just reflect revolution, it should seduce people into it.
Hmm.
When you hear Sonia Sanchez give a poem, recite a poem, you are pulled into a different world. There is a rhythm. Your body responds. Amiri Baraka. I understand some of you are now losing your minds over Ryan Coogler's The Sinners. This is the point. Use your writing. Want to remember, to reconnect, to, there's so many rhythms within us. Do you understand that as a writer, for me, I felt like I had to go into a meditative stand, it's like trance almost. I needed to get quiet so I could remember, so I could tap into the stirrings of a rhythm and then follow them deeper. And so when you read my book, The Salt Eaters, and you examine the seven sisters and my call at the beginning of the book, do you want to be healed?
Hmm.
And that's the question I have for all of your listeners and those who are listening now, those who are going to listen later, because I know you're going to share this because you know it's important information, is, do you want to be healed? And if you do, what are you going to do about it? And yes, writing is one of those ways. Even the psychologists and all of that talk to us about the importance of journaling.
Hmm.
And not only would I journal, I would write my dreams, I would write my hopes, I would write my fears when I would acknowledge that I had fears. And then I would tap into that for my self healing. I would tap into that to find the courage to break free from ingrained patterns of self sabotage. Let me ask your listeners this, and I know this might not be anything you wanted to ask me, but you know what? I'm Toni Cade Bambara. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about.
Please do. Please do.
I want to ask your people, what are the patterns of self sabotage in your life? Did you hear me? In what ways do you keep sabotaging yourself? Now, what you gonna do about it? How are you? Listen, revolution starts with the self. It's not a thing out there. You start with that healing. You start with understanding you have a right to be free. And then you show up in every space and you understand that you have a right to be there, that you belong in that space, and you stop shrinking and you stop dimming your life and you pay attention. I paid attention to people.
Hmm.
And over again, people would tell you how I would speak to them and I would wake something up in them. Who needs to wake something up in themselves? Who wants to heal? Hmm. Revolution begins with a self, in the self.
Hmm.
And for all of us who are listening today, you were drawn here for a reason. I'm going to say this. I'm going to initiate each of you into the roles of cultural workers. You know what a cultural worker is?
Go on. Please tell me.
Cultural worker is someone who belongs to an oppressed people, and in serving those people, again, their goal is to make revolution irresistible. So, what little kids are you reading to? What little boys and girls are you reminding of the greatness in them? Perhaps do you need to start with yourself? Let me tell you about knowing who you are. You know, my father, Wade Cade. My father, Wade Cade, wanted a boy. He was quite disappointed when I came out a girl. This was before all the ultrasounds that you all do right now. I was born on March 25th, 1939. And my father had determined to call me Milton McCain after his white employer. Can you imagine that? My father was the kind of black man who, when he talked to black people, hey, what's up? And when he got around white people, greetings, greetings, sir, greetings. He went up two, three octaves. I loved my father, but I tell you, it was a sad day when I realized that when our people were struggling for liberation and fighting back, all my father wanted to do was to be in the good graces of white people. And so he had the nerve to want to call me Milton McCain Cade. Well, I didn't come out a boy, as you can see. And if you could see me in all my glory, you would know I did not come out a boy. Well, he changed the name to Miltona McCain Cade. I looked at my mother, Helen, when I grew up. I said, you let that man do that to me. But you know what? I don't hold anybody responsible for my own life. I was still a young girl when I told my mother, call me Toni Cade. Take that crappy Milton. What? Named for your white employer? Are you kidding me? And then in 1970, at age 31, you ever been to a store and a particular outfit catches your eye? You just have a sense about it. And you take it and you put it on. And your shoulders go up. Your head is held a little higher. And you feel good. It's like it was made for you. Well, honey, as I was going through my grandmother's sketchbooks, I came across a name, Bambara. Do you know about the Bambaras? Well, go and read up about them. They are people who live in the area now known as Mali. And I said, this name, this name suits me. And I added Bambara to my name. I am Toni Cade Bambara. And let me tell you, I never felt more of myself than when I named myself. I was 31 years old. Say what? That's who I am. And you
Mm.
can rename yourself too, regardless of your origins and who thought they could put what label on you. You choose what you answer to, because I sure did.
Mm.
And I did it at a time when women were supposedly even more oppressed than they are now. Although it seems like you guys are trying to turn back the hands of time right now. I got married at 20. I went to Queens College. I was like mostly the only black student there. Do you know that these people thought, oh my gosh, she's so vivacious? They didn't even know how old I was. I was pretty young. She's so vivacious and she's so full of life. And often I'll be the only black kid, black student in the theater production, a student, behind the scenes, stage manager, all of that. I, I was determined to make the best of that situation, to draw out of life everything that it had. These people thought I was the life of the party. Little did they know that that period was a period of intense isolation for me. On the inside, there weren't people that I could really speak heart to heart.
Mm.
They saw one part of me. They didn't truly understand who I was. But I, the entire time, was on a quest for self-discovery. I was actually going to school initially to be a medical doctor. But I'm telling you, I looked at those formaldehyde jars with frogs in them, and I looked at a script for a play. There was no competition. I'm grateful for my time there. I'm grateful for all my times. Afterwards, I got married at age 20. I got married to Anthony Batten. A year later, I knew, what were you thinking? We started divorce proceedings, but it took 5 years for us to finally divorce. And once that divorce was done, I saved up my money. And guess what? Just like the white kids could do, I packed my bag and I went to Europe. No plans, no nothing. Nobody was sponsoring me. I went to France, I went to Italy. I learned, I immersed myself, I made connections before I came back to the US. I'm telling you, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Because
Mm.
our black male writers were, James Baldwin, so many of them, they traveled and they lived abroad and all of that. But black women writers, not so much. There are these restrictions on us. And that is why I say that the revolution has to be about the self, about the whole person, not about male feminine and masculine feminine and so on and so forth. I wasn't going to fit into any of those things neatly. I did have a partner, Gene Lewis. Ooh, when I tell you he was a tall, handsome drink, oh my goodness. Yes, and he was very supportive. And with him, we had my child, Karma. Um, I was very interested in a lot of religions, ifas, forms of spirituality, Hinduism. I traveled extensively, um, but I never let anyone put or keep me in a box. And so, as you learn about me, the question is, what are you going to do with your own life?
Mm.
I told you I traveled to Cuba to study revolutionary education and culture. I traveled to Ghana to explore Pan African traditions and culture. I traveled to Nigeria to study Yoruba and Igbo spirituality and storytelling. Let me tell you, now we in the South here in the US, we can tell a story. But let me tell you, there is something about those moonlight stories on the shores of Africa. You can have five people tell you the same story and tell it so differently, and all the while teaching, all the while imparting culture and history and understanding of spirituality and an understanding of who we are. We must return to these traditions so we can remember. I traveled to Senegal to engage with what they call the griot oral traditions. Just call them the oral traditions. The same oral traditions that are here, the same oral traditions that African people have taken wherever they have gone in the world. I traveled to Haiti to explore the Haitian Revolution, voodoo, and Black resistance. In France, I engaged with post colonial thinkers. I immersed myself in studying literature and understanding the diaspora. And in Italy, I was exploring film and global radicalism. I also went to Vietnam, invited for a group of women, anti imperialist solidarity and war resistance. I'm going to ask you, my young sisters, my older sisters, my in-between sisters, what you going to do with your life? Brothers, that question is there for you too. What you going to do with your life? And by the way, when are you going to stop holding down the women in your life so they can be whole? And tell you what? Tell you what? That also allows you to be whole. You know what it takes to hold someone down? First of all, in your mind, in your spirit, you've got to be in a certain place. Set yourself free
Mm.
that we may all be free.
Mm.
Mm. What else you want to ask me?
Yes. You oftentimes ask us to, in your words, reappraise the past, reevaluate where we've been, clarify where we are, predict or anticipate where we are headed.
Hmm.
Could you elaborate what you mean by that?
Let's keep it really simple. If you're going to cook a meal, now I know we can conjure up things, we can be magicians. It helps to have an understanding of what do I have? Who am I trying to cook for? And what's the outcome am I trying to achieve? Same thing if you get into a car and you say you're going on a trip. It's helpful, or let me, before you get into a car, if you say you're going on a trip, it's helpful to figure out where am I trying to go?
Mm.
What season is it there? How much money or resources or connections do I have? What is my plan? What is my ultimate outcome? Now, your ultimate outcome may just be adventures. In that case, don't complain whatever happens. But yes, as we talk about liberation, we must be intentional about understanding our past, our traditions, our history, our culture. I really believe that the tools for our liberation lie in our past, in those traditions that we have forgotten. I really believe root workers, spiritual workers have to be at the helm of this work. They have to anchor this work because they're the ones who are going to help with the healing process. And so when I say clarify and I say and then understand where it is you appraise and then understand where it is you want, it is common sense, my people. You don't start building a house without understanding what kind of house am I trying to build. Do I have the resources to build it? What is the outcome? Is this house being built in a place that floods? Is it being built in a place that experiences a lot of hurricanes? There are different materials that are used in different places. And so, as we contemplate our freedom, as we engage in revolution, we must understand who we have been, who has been waging war against us. We must understand how they move, which will allow us to kind of predict what the future could be and what we're going to do. So, for instance, here in the United States, who who studies our history and does not understand that rich white men, rich white Protestant men see themselves as the owners of this land that they stole? Who doesn't understand that any time Black people start to do well, there is a white lash? Therefore, when we elected Barack Obama into the presidency, rather than just have an endless party, no, now we have a first Black man. What we should have been doing is gathering gathering our forces together to understand that the white lash will come, and the extent to which we will be impacted will depend on how well we prepared. Kind of like if you know it's about to be hurricane season.
Yep.
People put sandbags around their house. They
Mm-hmm.
board up their windows. They get enough food and so on and so forth. We were not paying attention to history. We were not appraising where we were. We were not anticipating what could happen. And so here you all are with 2025. And I should say, here we all are, because I'm always with my people, whether in flesh or in spirit. Question is, will we learn? How did we fight back the last time?
Mm.
What did we do right? What could we do differently? And are we willing to embrace this opportunity for revolution? And for those of you who are revolutionaries, though some of you just use that term, you have no idea what it means. But for those of you who are revolutionaries, you know what? Put a smile on your face. Cut a rug every now and then. Because if all you show is the burden, who the hell wants to
Will
join you
join
in
you. Yeah.
that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The revolution is fun. It should be a joyous revolt, as the book that was written about me is titled. This was written by one of my students, Linda Janet Holmes. And, like a Black woman, I could wear my hair anyhow I wanted to. So you got the 70s look here, and this was one of my quote unquote more mature looks.
Mm. Speaking of maturity, you said, and I quote, not all speed is movement.
Oh, child. Speak on it. You tell me about that. What do you think about that? Let's have a conversation.
So, as I understand, reading your book, you said
Which one
it's
of my
important.
books did you read?
This is in the conversation, Black Women Writers at Work.
Yes, yes, yes.
Um, you said not all speed is movement.
Mm-hmm.
People are performative when they do revolution,
Mm-hmm.
performative when they push back against authority, performative about who they speak to, performative about what they speak to. Now, in speaking, you also said, and I'm coming back to the speed is not movement.
Mm-hmm.
In speaking, you said it's important to not just speak, but to speak and understand the impact that you are hoping to get out of said action. So, which comes
Yes.
back to speed, or not all speed is movement. Grounded in the fact that we have so many quote unquote intellectuals at the moment, we can transpose that phrase to say, what is intellectual? You just reading two quotes, not putting it in context, not doing deep study,
Mm.
out here misinforming people. How do you expect people to move based on half baked information? How? So for me, that's what I understand by that. And also, sometimes just keeping still, it's stuff in itself. Just sit still and contemplate.
And that's what I had to do to write The Salt Eaters, which is where you
Mm,
got that quote from. I
mm,
moved to Atlanta and people were saying, "What are you going there to do? Are you sure you don't have a job and all that?" By the way, I thought I had a job with Clark University. We'd had a conversation, nothing signed, but I had a job. I get there and they're like, "Well, there was nothing signed, and so no, you don't." And it was quite amazing to be treated in that way. But no, never mind. Back to
mm,
the point that you were raising. I said, I'm going to Atlanta and I'm going to sit down. You ever heard your grandma or somebody say, go sat down somewhere? Do you
mm,
know what they're saying? I went and I sat down and I got quiet and then I could write. And that's when I wrote my book, The Salt Eaters. And yes, in that book, I said, not all speed is movement. It's a reminder that urgency without direction is not revolution. You can go fast and get nowhere in a hurry
mm,
and actually put us all in a worse predicament. Because now whatever gas we had in the car, you've blown it going fast.
mm, mm. So there is, I think we've lost a good sister. She should come back shortly. But before she does, um, she also wrote, if we're ever invited, I mean, in light of the colonial mindset, have we ever invited the beast to dinner? He didn't just come in and swipe the napkins, but started taking notes on the tablecloth and how to take over the house. We understand this to be the case that why is it that we're constantly seeking validation from those who do not like us? For one, we're pushed to the edge in the sense that we constantly go back to them for seeking validation, hoping that everything turns out the way we hope because they would they would boy I mean, what's the word I'm looking for? They would support whatever it is we're trying to achieve. But why would they support your liberation? Your liberation is breaking away from them. Control is what they thrive on. And if you were to break away from said control, you're liberated, you're going to be competing with them on an equal footing? Surely not. So Ms. Bambara wants us to own our own liberation, and it's important that we do that. So I would try and get the sister back, and bear me a second. But before I do that, I also like to state the fact that not only was she a writer, she was also a very important filmmaker. She made the film The Bombing of Osage Avenue, which was the bombing of the area in Philadelphia. Why is that film important? That film showed the violence of the state against Black liberation movements in the United States and continues to be the hallmark of Black resistance in the United States today. You could, even Black Lives Matters experience the same thing, the jailing of great activists like Mumia Abdul Jumar, some who are just left out to come out and eventually just, fritter away. Some have been jailed for, for frivolous reasons. The keys thrown away because they believe the moment these people are out there, they won't be able to control the population. So I think I might not. I've just tried reaching out to the sister, and we're still struggling. So if nothing, what I will do is I would I would hold on a sec. So I'm afraid, due to a technical hitch, we'll probably have to stop here tonight and continue next week. But the thing is, next week, hello. Yes, yes, yes. And what I will do is we'll continue with Winnie Mandela next week. I would sign off here and we'll continue next week. Okay? Okay. So there's a thunderstorm on the other side of the world. And lucky me, in the United Kingdom, we're not experiencing such weather excitement. So what we'll do is next week, we're going to move on with Winnie Mandela. We're going to be talking about Winnie Mandela next week. And so Regards from the sister and from myself. Until next week, I would say good night and stay safe. Good night.